So, on to the Takom Jeep. We have our chassis all laid out here in front of us, and this was all built up by Mr. Lucas C., and he did an amazing job on this. I am not surprised, though, because he is, of course, a chassis and suspension man. So he did all this, and he painted it all up. But we're going to do a little bit of light weathering on this guy here to make it just look a little bit more used, not so abused, something that maybe a Jeep that is very, very early in its life and hasn't been through the trials and tribulations of combat and driving through the French countrysides and mud pits and all that kind of stuff. So just going to do a little bit of a light weathering on stuff. And by that, I mean, like, here is the radiator. And we just did a little bit of a wash on this guy here just to give it a little bit of a tone down on the color. We've been painting up the rubber black for the XF85 rubber black for, oh, and it's still wet apparently on the hose connectors. So got a few of those set aside there. This is the water pump, and we have the rubber black on that painted up. And then this is the I believe this is the air intake. Yeah, this is the air intake. And then the air cleaner. And that, of course, is still drying too, because we just slathered that. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of light weathering on this guy. We have been adding a few more pieces to the engine. And you'll notice the engine is grayish with just like a light overcoat of green. That is by purpose. I wanted this to look like it had been hastily sprayed and ready for shipping out. So yeah, we're going to probably do a little bit more airbrushing on this to cover a little bit of the thin spots and stuff, because there's a couple areas that are a little thin. But otherwise, I'm liking how this looks. I didn't do most of this buildup. Again, Luca did most of this buildup. I added on, I think, the distributor, the coil, the starter, the oil filling tube, if I remember correctly, and then over here on this side we did, I believe that's the mechanical fuel pump right there, and then this guy, which I'm not 100% sure either. It could be could be fuel filter, and then the carb, which is a dinky little 1-barrel deal. We're going to actually detail paint that a little bit more than what it is right now. And then the intake manifold, and of course the exhaust manifold. Now, something I need to point out about these two pieces here: they are molded separately, and they are molded very, very well, to the point where the intake manifold actually has little flanges on the back side. So you have to put both of these pieces on at the same time. Kind of like set one in place, and then you set the exhaust manifold over the top of it, and then you press them both home. And I don't have any glue on those guys, and they are snug with a little bit of paint that we have on there. It's holding everything just fine. We probably will drop a little bit of cement from the bottom side to, just in case we make a mistake and get a little bit too much on there. But you can see the little flanging on there. See how nicely that all matches up. So the flanging that's on the intake manifold does make it a little difficult to try and get on if you put the exhaust manifold on first. But if you put the exhaust manifold on secondly, it's a little hard to get around all the stuff, because we already have the carb mounted. And it was a little hard to get around all that stuff. So yeah, we had to put them both on at the same time. Not a problem, just a little bit of a little fiddliness when it comes to fitting parts on there. But hey, this is a large scale kit. These parts seem rather robust. They can take a little bit of the abuse. Now, we also have our spark plugs. We have to put those in, and we are looking for some stuff in the stash to go from, to use as some wiring. Luca did give us some really nice stuff from ProTech, but I have misplaced it here in the jungle that is now my desk. So I'm still looking for that. On the back side, there is this triangular piece that's supposed to be back here. And you're supposed to put the transmission piece onto the cross member and then match it up to the... it's going to come to me in a second. the transfer case. It's supposed to mount up to the transfer case, and you see there's a triangle opening there, and then it really helps line everything up. But because of the way this is all put together, it was difficult to try and get that triangle piece slipped into place and get into those holes. You see we had to make one a little bit larger there. Get into those holes without destroying all of this delicate assembly right in here. So I went ahead and sliced off the connector piece, since everything's going to line up just fine anyway. Went ahead and sliced off the connector piece off the backside of the transmission so that we can just go ahead and drop everybody right in, such as this. There we go. There we go. Just like that. Do a little bit of fudging around a little bit to get everything perfect. But we're going to wait to do that until we get the engine a little bit more detailed first, and then we'll slap it in place. So the way this is going so far is we will finish doing the engine bits that we need to do, put that in place, and then we're going to put on the actual body of the kit, which will just slip right on. It goes right, this steering column actually goes through the floor, and that'll just slip right on, sort of like that, and then we'll glue that all into place. But right now we're going to work on this and kind of figure out what we want to do with the chassis to make it just a little bit dirtier. We also have our exhaust system all painted up in, we just did red oxide primer with a little wash of the brown panel liner just to dirty it up a bit. This is the down tube from the manifold, and it crosses over underneath the engine. Everything's fitting so nicely. It's really, really cool. Nice and refreshing, I should say. But yeah, we're going to get on to doing a little bit more weathering and stuff and get everything mounted up, and then do the exhaust and do the body and all that jazz. So we'll check back a little bit later on when we have more to show you. Okay, so we've been goofing around with the frame a little bit. It's been about 20 minutes or so. And Luca, he had painted all this with the airbrush and the Tamiya jar paints, and that stuff can be, it can give a little bit of a texture. It actually has a bit of a, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it actually has a little bit of a texture to it. I do apologize about the fan if that's messing up the microphone, but when I have this stuff open, I have to have that fan running. So let's see here. Now along through here, we have not done any of the panel liner stuff, but along through here we have. And if this would be kind enough to focus on what we want it to, that would be nice. There we go. So it has a bit of an aged look. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. I want it to look like something that's not pristine, something that's been around a little bit. And this frame is so thin and spindly that the camera's having a hard time focusing. So we haven't done any washes on the bottom of the front pumpkin at all, but we have done it on the bumper and a little bit on the leaf springs and a little bit around the inside of the frame rails, especially around the steering mechanisms and the brake bits. So yeah, this is really coming up nice. The details come up real nice. We're not going to do a whole lot of weathering on the top of the chassis because the body's going to be sitting on that. We're not going to see it. But in the little pockets and stuff that we have along through here where the attachment pockets would be, we will be focusing on we'll be focusing on it better than the camera is, that's for sure. But yeah, we're it's looking a heck of a lot better. I'm liking the results so far. Here's a good shot. So yeah, it's looking really good. And then of course this is just the first pass. This is just the first pass. This is the dark pass, and then we'll come by with a little bit of pastels and stuff and do a little bit of a lighter pass on things. But that'll be after we have the engine installed and probably the chassis in the body on the chassis, because if we handle this too much after we put the pastels in there, we just run the risk of rubbing them all off again. And I don't want to do a lot of transparent coats all over the top of stuff to seal it in, because that just starts building up real fast. So that's where we're at right now. We'll get on with this, and then we'll see if we can't finish this up in the next 20 minutes or so, and then come back and show you how it looks. Okay, so the washes of the frame and engine are basically done. Unless I've missed a spot that I find a little bit later on, needs a little bit of touch up, something like that. Basically, we are done. And I have this on the cat scratch pad because putting this over the green mat, you can't see anything. So decided to go ahead and see if we could do a more of a neutral background there. So trying to be fancy. So we have the engine just sort of mocked in place, and it's held in there pretty well. I like that. That's kind of slick. So we're just making sure everything looks good. We did a black wash on the engine block and transmission in order to bring out some detail on that without making it look too grimy. I think maybe we'll just go after this with some a light dusting of pastels to do some highlight work on there, you know, like on the edges of the valve cover and up here on the timing cover, stuff like that. So so that it's not so dark, because we do have a lot of heavily reinforced shadows right now with the black wash on the engine. The frame itself, it's got some nice looking streaking going on there. I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up very well, because it is subtle. But I mean, we do have some nice reinforcement of the bolt heads and the bracketry. If we can focus, thank you. But yeah, I think that's looking really cool. It's looking a lot more realistic to my eye. And then yeah, we're getting all ready to. Oh, by the way, I did not realize this, but this hitch clip actually functions. That's cool. Oh, I apologize about my camera being finicky today. I must have changed the settings on it somehow. But there you go. That's kind of slick. So we're going to set this aside, and I'm thinking it's lunchtime, so we're going to go take care of that. We're going to go feed the beast, and we'll be back with a little more updates as they come along. So we'll talk to you then. Sweet. Okay, so we are back from lunch and dinner and breakfast and lunch again, because we got busy doing other things. But this is looking really, really good. Even though it's hard to see what's going on there. Oh, take it. It's okay. All right, so we added on the water pump to the engine, and then discovered that that was a big key, because the water pump is a spacer for the fan belt assembly, and then went ahead and put the fan on also. Figured that was a good idea. And look at this. This has some pretty nice little turns here going all the way down to the lower radiator hose. So for us car guys, putting the lower radiator hose on is like optional. But I mean, I've even won awards on cars that didn't have a lower radiator hose, because the judges were like, it's okay, I get it. But anyway, that's all in the past now. But yeah, this actually goes on here pretty easily. It's keyed, so you're not going to worry about this downturn pipe here rubbing into anything. Everything matches up really, really well. Gives us lots of tolerance and clearance, and that's just all we can ask for today, right? Is tolerance and clearance. But yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, something I did not realize about Jeeps, and this is probably because of the front-wheel drive aspect of it, but the four-wheel drive front pumpkin dealy, but the radiator is actually offset a little bit to the driver's side. I didn't realize that. That's kind of cool. The radiator itself, there's a dinky little hole down there at the bottom. You see that hole looks a little on the ugly side. Well, that's because I realized that we needed to actually just give that a bit of a chase. I used a jeweler's file. That's not the one. It's the blue handle. There we go. I have these color coded so I know which is which. But I just took a square file and gave that hole a little bit of a chase to just widen it up ever so much more, so that it would fit over that little pin right there. So we've done a couple of test fits, and we're about to go ahead and glue on the fan shroud. Over the radiator itself, and we did a quick pass over this with a soft lead pencil. This one here is just a number 2 HB. So yeah, we just go over this, give it a little bit of a metallic color to it. Now, I've discovered the best way to, I just did this completely different than what I'm about to explain, but I've discovered the best way to do this is to do it diagonally. We do it diagonally, and you don't actually wear grooves in your pencil like I did on this guy here, so it doesn't like get stuck in the tracks and stuff. So yeah, I like to do that diagonally. Something my dad had shown me when I was a kid getting started in the model car realm. These are the little tricks and stuff that just absolutely got me interested in doing model car building, because I was like, oh wow, pencils are better, or can be used for more things than just filling out Scantron tests. How about that? as he does it not diagonally. There we go. I'm just going to reinforce this. And of course, as soon as you start touching this, it's going to come off. So if you want to spray something over the top of this, like maybe some varnish from Vallejo or some jazz. I'm not sure if that'll take it away or dull it down or whatever, but it will seal it up. Whatever it looks like, it'll seal it up. So camera's kind of showing that weird, but I think it's just because of the frame rate that it's recording, but that looks pretty cool to my eye. So we're going to get onto that thing there. We've also have the bottom of the body right here. We also have the top of the body too, and that's over here. But we got the bottom of the body, and we're going to start doing some washes on that to do some, pre-weathering, I suppose is a great way to say that. And then we're going to stick this on the chassis, glue that all up. And then once we get the body on the chassis, it's looking like it's going to be a flume ride to the finish. So buckle up, folks, because this is where it gets fun. I often refer to this part of the build as the quickening, because this is what decides whether or not this is going to be the kit that we start focusing on for the next few days to get finished. So I'm like, there can be only one. This is the quickening. Whole sorts of Highlander stuff. I'm going to actually, before I actually add this to the chassis, I'm going to give it a nice little quick spray of this stuff for the interior here, because that's looking a little thin here and there. The light's picking up as a sheen, but I'm actually seeing a lot of the base gray color coming through. So I think I might give this a quick spray of that just to kind of reinforce what's going on down there. I did have to brush paint, and I missed a spot. I had to brush paint the pockets down inside there because those were difficult to get to. And I do plan on having the lids open on these. I don't have any accoutrement to put down inside there, but I just thought it would be kind of cool as a display piece to have those propped open so that people that are looking at these kits can go, oh, cool, I could put like flares in there, or a sandwich, or a sandwich flare, or flare of sandwiches, or something like that. So also, we got to paint up our pads, our seat pads, and then our hip pads, because there's these hip pads that go right in here. And as a person that's of a large frame, I see these hip pads in there. I'm like, thank you, thank you for designing it that way, Mr. Jeep Builders. I used some khaki on this one here. It's XF49. I'm not happy with that. I think that's a little too light, so I think we're going to go with some XF73, which is almost like a mint green, but it looks like a nice canvas color, so a nice green canvas color. So I think we'll go with that. All right, so we're going to switch off here. I want to play some music. YouTube doesn't like that. I'm thinking we're going to play some propeller heads or wise guys. Either one of those guys have some pretty good beats, so we're going to get in there and get on with it. All right, we'll check back in with you when we have a little bit more show. Okay, so this is going to be the final segment. That's my Shatner invitation. The final segment for this particular video, because it is getting long, of course. Now, we have the body on the chassis, and the engine is, nicely installed. But there's a couple of things we wanted to point out to you guys when building this thing. And it's very clear in the instructions of what's going to be going on, but I just wanted to show you a little thing that you might be in for. Now, underneath, and we're going to get Corporal BG in here. So he's all dressed up for the occasion. So right in there, we can see that's going to be the, I believe that's the clutch pedal. And then over here on the other side of the steering column, there is the brake pedal. So those are two little pins, very, 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 very delicate little guys. And we can see them poking through the floor here, down on the side of the steering column. Now, the thing is, on most kits that I've ever built, it's just a pedal stuck to the bottom of the dashboard or glued to the floor or firewall, whatever. This dude here actually has these little rods coming through the floorboard. And I'm sorry if we can't get better visual on that. But yeah, they actually, they have a little bit of play to them, so I'm moving the stick on them. So when you're putting the body on the chassis, you will have to line up the steering column and the clutch and brake pedal throws, rods, or whatever you want to call them, because those actually go through the floor. They do float so that they're not like pressed all the way up against the firewall or anything like that. So they do float, and then there are pedals which are in my parts jar here. In the bottom of the parts jar, I should add. But there are petals that will be glued to the top of those. That's going to be a kind of a risky business, but of course, I would suggest putting those on close to last, because I don't know, maybe you'll have to take the body off the chassis once or twice more. I've been discovering that I've had to do that in order to make sure things are lining up correctly. Yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a tricky situation. Now, you may notice if you have this kit or instructions that you will recognize the fact that I have quite a lot of this built up already before putting it onto the chassis. That's my own I'm not going to say error, but that was my own way of doing things. I thought I would put a lot of stuff on here before putting it on the chassis, because I figured a lot of the stuff would be easier to do, like the gun mount and stuff, before it's on the chassis, because there was a lot of pressing and stuff we had to do, and I didn't want to crush the suspension and stuff like that. So I did do a lot of buildup on here before putting it on the actual chassis. Now I'll rotate it over and take a look at the bottom, and I have not done any of the weathering yet on the bottom yet, so I will be pulling the body back off the chassis, and we're going to do that right now. One little thing we want to watch out for is the bottom of the spare tire holder bracket deal, this little gusseting piece. It has a pinhole in the body and a pinhole in the frame, and it does bridge the two, so we need to be aware of that when putting everything together. You could probably shave that pin off there and just glue ahead and glue it to the body like I did, but it's also a very handy tool for aligning everything. If that lines up, then we're doing good. So let's see if we can't kick that off there. There we go, just like that. And then we're going to just jiggle her a little. There we go. Now there is this weird little deal on the steering column. We'll show you this in a second. And I did have to widen the hole a little bit in the firewall. There we go. I had to hold the steering column hole a little bit in the firewall there, because it's got this little dealie here that will actually connect to this jazz that's going on right here on the bottom of the dash. The steering column kind of rests in that groove there. So that's just a word to the wise to watch out for that. So here we see the clutch and brake pedal rods. See these guys? So when you're lining everything up, now thankfully everything is clustered very, very close together, so you don't have to do a whole lot of shimmy and shake and try to get that on there, but it can cause some problems, and you could bend these or break these off very easily. So that's just a word of caution there on that. But so far, I mean, we're looking really good. I went ahead and started doing some mock-ups on some of the things here, like the 50 cal. This whole piece here is separate. I painted that separately. I wanted it to be green opposed to the flat black of the gun, and we're going to go do some gun detailing, probably maybe a little bit of Ushi powder on that, not too much, because those things, you know, they weren't like beat all up and everything. So we were taking our time on painting the seat cushions. Those did come out really, really well. And here is the passenger side. Nope, that's driver's side, excuse me. So that's a seat cover. This is a seat back. There we go. So I did paint them a different shade of green just to make them look a little more canvasy looking. So I like that. So we can do a little bit of weathering and shadowing on that, and shading and stuff like that. So that's cool. So the plan now is to get the radiator on there. That's finally cured up and ready to go on. So it's got a bad case of the clamps. That's going to go in place, and we're going to get that in place. And then once we get that in place, we're going to put the body on permanently then. And then there are several things that connect from the engine to the firewall, and we want to make sure that that's all nice and solid and rigid and where it's going to be for forever. So we'll get on with that. So that's going to all be in the next segment, the next part of the video collection. So, all right. We're going to go ahead and call it quits right now on this video. I'm going to keep working along and start building up footage for the next video, and we'll talk to you all a little bit later on. Bye.